Germs was done on storyboard by Chris and Ian Graham, I believe. And this original bit in here is supposed to be a parody of really bad old sci-fi films from the 50s. Again, another Jonah and Rob script. A very good episode, basic idea to show, Zim dealing with these microbes. Sort of a nod to War of the Worlds in some ways. That alien was supposed to be sort of like one of the bugs from Starship Troopers. John loves Starship Troopers, the movie. At least the design sense of it. I don't know if he liked the writing at all. A lot of drawings, a lot of work went into making this thing explode. I remember the board artist drew a bunch of drawings of it, and then our effects designer Kathleen Quaife drew a lot of shots of how this thing blows up, and it's only there for about a second or so less. Some of the dullest footage of guys marching around. We still kick Ian around over his boarding on this. It's just so flat and lifeless. Although that's a nice shot right there. Good framing. It's always fun seeing Gur react to the Earth culture. It was really great to see Zim on the defensive for once also. On the absolute defensive. He was always, he was on the defensive with, whenever Dib would come after him. But in this case, it was just his own mania getting the best of him. So he actually had Zim's personality collapsing into itself. It was a great idea. The whole planet Colnalia thing that comes up here, it really was quite a gratuitous and extensive design problem. Because it was almost this useless sort of a planet that we never would use again. It was just used as a really quick joke. And a lot of 3D that went into it, came out very nice. It was a good idea. I don't know if the 3D ever came out as good with the Germs. It looks okay here while I watch it, but those Germs are actually 3D squiggles in the middle of 2D matte images that were overlaid on the picture. So we did blue screen of those blobs moving around, and then we basically imposed it with 3D put into those blue screen blobs. And that's how the whole thing came together. A lot of work for such a simple effect. But it looks pretty nice. It sort of gives you the idea of Germs. I don't know. For some reason, green seems to play off the idea of Germs, and they were just squiggly little sickle cells, I believe. Yeah, here's Planet Colnalia. Nice 3D animation. And then we're back into 2D. It's funny watching it. There is so much work that was put into just the way things move and float. And a lot of people told our board artists as they watched the show that they understood what we were doing and they liked what we were doing, but they admitted that they would never want to sort of put in the effort and the time to kind of do what we did on this show. It's kind of sad now that the series is over. There are probably 5 or 6 really great board artists that came out of the series. Like Chris and Ian Graham and Sean Murray, Ray Angram, Joe Daniello, and Kyle Menke. Really exceptional talent. And they can now do this stuff even better than it was shown here. And they understand how everything works even better. But nobody in the industry does this sort of stuff. And nobody really wants them to do this sort of stuff. So I hope one day we get another show going where we can all hop on and sort of take the visual film style even beyond what we're doing here. It was great doing montages. Kind of funny, these early Zim shows had montages, and none of the crew were used to doing montages. It's not really a staple in animated shows that much. Really fun to do. Heavy design-wise, though. The death sequence of the bug. always was very funny. It was great to see. Great to see Zim kill something for a change. In some ways, you can almost take it that this is a sort of his mission in microcosm. It's great having that last lethal blast go out. It was great in these early days playing off the characters against each other. You know, Zim and Gur saw the worlds in the world in two different ways, and they reacted to the world and maneuvered within the world in two different ways. So, whereas Zim spent the whole afternoon worrying about these germs, you know, Gur would come into the house and would be filled with germs and not give, you know, any care to this. You know, which one's the sane one, Gur or Zim? You really have to think about it in the end, you know. I mean, Zim's valid. There are germs all over the place. But on the other hand, they're not harmful germs, so Gur's just enjoying his life. That hedonism versus, you know, sort of a prudent zealousy for this mission really played off well writing-wise. You didn't get as much of that later on. I think Zim and Gur sort of wandered away from that, being opposites. While they weren't the same people, this guy with the legs, you see him there. He was supposed to be abducted. That guy with the legs was supposed to show back up sitting outside with a woman with no arms. It's funny they allowed that in. I think they just never realized what they were looking at. New York, I think, when they saw the storyboards and the designs, they just didn't realize that was a guy with no legs. I think they thought that he was sitting on his legs. So suddenly the show's on the air and we get a note, you know, saying, hey, what is this guy with no legs? Funny the things that New York didn't catch, because, you know, later on they started looking for penises, which we rarely ever had in the show. Well, you know, we never really put them in, obviously, or tried to make a point of these penises, but New York was on a search for penises when they should have been looking more all the time for, you know, grotesque freaks. When Zim's freaking out back there, a lot of jump cuts. Not the sort of film language you want, but I chose to do these jump cuts on Zim talking, you know, so you're just jumping in and out or you know, cutting. He's the same size and you're cutting around him. Sort of just show how mangled his thought processes are. And also just cutting very violently as well sort of shows that he's just losing touch. There was a timer that gave me a lot of crap about that. Didn't want to time the sequence, didn't want to hear about it. I tried to change it. Absolutely hated it. But I kept telling her what we were trying to do, what I was trying to do with it. Because there was a reason behind what we were doing. But it had to be directly by the rules for. That's the funny thing, is rules of such things are great to keep, you know, storytelling and film language. Good to keep to rules, so that when you need to break them, you can create effective storytelling through the breaking of those rules. You don't have to stick to them constantly. When you break them, make sure you have a good reason for them. And come up with a good way to orchestrate when you break from the rules. This goes for anything, really. Not just film language. Chris Graham's section. I think Zim's clothes were sort of a nod to, what was his name? Howard Hughes, the eccentric millionaire. It's kind of funny when you think about it. People that are afraid of germs, you know, they always hold up tissues as this great antiseptic, and there's no guarantee that these tissues don't have germs on them. I mean, those tissues might have tons of germs on them. How do you know that those tissues are sanitary? It's absolutely a ridiculous idea. Just mania in full tilt.